NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play.
What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, let's go. Let's dive right in. A bit to talk about in this episode, like always. We got to obviously talk about the major news in Blake Griffin, but before we get that, just want to briefly talk about the All-Star game and the All-Star festivities because, you know, I didn't really touch upon any of that last episode, and it's still news. The festivities this year were just, look, the All-Star game, everything about what happened this on Sunday just seemed rushed. And I understand it was, of course it was rushed. It was all on one night, one day. That was the whole point behind it. And because of it, it didn't seem to have the same type of flair. You know, the skills challenge was all right. The three-point contest was actually pretty good. You know, the fact that it ended with the last shot by Steph Curry, that was pretty cool. And the All-Star game itself was entertaining, but it wasn't a close game at all. You know, Team LeBron dominated, and you know, there were some decent moments. I mean, I think the highlights were obviously, you know, seeing Curry and Damian Lillard shooting half-court threes and making them. I think that was probably the best part of the All-Star game. But overall, everything just didn't have the same feel it normally does. And that slam dunk contest, I ain't even going to talk about. That was just garbage, okay? I'm sorry. Everyone always says the slam dunk contest is dead. I firmly don't believe that. I think if you look at, like, last year's contest with the controversy to it and what Aaron Gordon did and the previous 2 years ago with Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine, the Aaron Gordon-Zach LaVine contest was great. And I felt like last year's contest between Derrick Jones Jr. and Aaron Gordon was great as well. So I don't believe this whole dunk contest is dead. But this dunk contest was complete garbage. And, like, I was so bored. And the best dunk to me was that first dunk. And for whatever reason, it got the lowest score. I know it was Cassius Stanley's dunk. The between the legs dunk, like running, bounce between the, like, it got the lowest score. And to me, that was the best dunk out of all the dunks. And the fact that the winning dunk was someone who blew a kiss to the rim, but he didn't even touch the rim. I'm sorry. I'm not going to get into that. That was terrible. That was a terrible dunk contest. Terrible, okay? But overall, the All-Star festivities, like I said, they just didn't have the same flair. And I once again, I understand why they had them, and it's really about business, but it just wasn't that entertaining, and that's just it, you know? So that's that with that. But Durant, obviously, didn't play because of the, you know, hamstring situation, and his team got destroyed. And but Kyrie and James Harden combined for 45 points, which was pretty cool. They both had some moments, but overall, that. So that's that with the All-Star game. I just wanted to address that because it did happen since the last NetsBoy episode, and it did involve the Nets into some capacity, you know, with Harden and Kyrie playing. So yeah. So now, though, of course, we got to address the big news. Like mentioned, Blake Griffin. So Blake Griffin signs with the Nets. And my reaction to that is, why not? I mean, the way I look at it, this can only help the Nets. Blake Griffin is certainly not the player he once was. I'm pretty sure everybody knows that now. He's currently averaging 12 points a game, I think 5 or 6 rebounds, shooting 36% from the floor, which is really bad, 31% from three. He's just not that great of a player anymore. That being said, he certainly isn't a trash player, and he certainly is still a versatile player that can only help this Nets team. So when I hear the news that the Nets were thinking about signing him after he got released by the Pistons, my reaction was, once again, why not? And the fact that Sean Marks managed to get him on a veteran's minimum contract, they didn't even have to use their mid-level exception that they have or their injured player exception that they have, once again shows why Sean Marks is just one of the best GMs in basketball. I mean, how? There were definitely other teams interested in Blake Griffin. How did the Nets manage to bring this guy on board for a veteran's minimum contract? That's like unbelievable. Like, I guess it's true. Blake said he really just wants an opportunity to win because he forfeited. I don't even know how much money he forfeited. It was well over $35 million. Almost, isn't it like $50 million or something he agreed to be bought out on or something like that with the Pistons? I don't even know. Just a lot of money. And then signs a veteran minimum contract of like $1.2 million. If that doesn't show you how much this guy doesn't care about the money and just wants to win, I don't know what does. But look, I love it. The way I look at it is Blake Griffin is going to be a veteran role player on this team. A guy who can play about 18 to 20 minutes a game, probably 15 to 20 minutes, provide decent minutes, playing either the 4 or the small ball 5, which we all know Steve Nash loves small ball 5s, small ball players. And, he's a decent playmaker. He can hit the three-point shot. He can post up a little bit. He's just not the same explosive athlete that he once was. And as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they said something like he hasn't dunked in 2 years, which is like mind-boggling if you think about it, because when you think about Blake Griffin, you're thinking about him jumping over cars in the slam dunk contest, posterizing Timothy Mozgov, things like that. Like these highlight dunks that he used to do. I know I think about when Jared Allen blocked the crap out of him a couple of years ago, which was awesome. But like just the fact that he hasn't dunked in 2 years just kind of gets you like, whoa, wait, what? Now, he also hasn't been that healthy the last 2 years. That's why he's been dealing with chronic knee issues, several knee surgeries. But now he's supposedly 100% or getting close to 100%. So maybe we'll see a couple dunks or lobs. They actually asked him in an interview, will we see you catching lobs and dunking with James Harden? And he just said, we will see. So I guess he doesn't really know. But overall, he's still an adequate player. No harm. Like I said, obviously this probably means that the Nets won't be bringing back any of their one of their 3 10-day contract players. Probably the Cook guy. I forgot his first name. But either way, you like it. It's depth. And right now, with Jeff Green still dealing with that shoulder stinger injury, and Kevin Durant still going to miss a couple more games at least, probably with his hamstring. They said he's going for another MRI to get a better understanding of what's going on. But Steve Nash said they're not going to rush him. Why not? Why not bring in Blake Griffin and have him take some quality minutes as the 4 and really help this team? That being said, though, I will say this. My only worry about this Blake Griffin signing is the same thing I was worried about last episode about Kevin Durant and Jeff Green coming back. And that is anybody who could threaten taking Nicholas Claxton's minutes. Nicholas Claxton needs to be in this rotation. He should be in this rotation. And objectively, he belongs in this rotation. However, I can see him being the odd man out when everyone comes back healthy because he's the young guy, the young kid. He's in his second year in the league. He's only played in 18 NBA games. And even though he's played great in that stretch, I can see Steve Nash doing what Steve Nash does. And that's ultimately appease Kevin Durant. DeAndre Jordan should be the guy who doesn't get that much minutes with all these players being in the fold. If the Nets want to go to the small ball lineup, it should be DeAndre Jordan who takes less minutes, if not gets out of the rotation. But it won't be, because we know that DeAndre Jordan is Kevin Durant's boy. They're best buds, as well as Kyrie Irving. That's why he's on this team. That is why he's still on this team. That is why the Nets he's never even popped up in trade conversations. The Nets could probably get a decent player or two for like Dinwiddie and DeAndre Jordan. Because Dinwiddie's name, of course, has been swirling around trade rumors, which that's a whole other episode in itself. But because the Nets don't want to trade away Kevin Durant's friend, DeAndre Jordan's never going to get traded. and he's always going to get a lot of minutes and always going to be in the rotation, even if he doesn't deserve it. So when I hear things like Blake Griffin is coming to this team and they expect to see him playing maybe the small ball 5, all I'm thinking about is another small ball lineup that doesn't include Nicholas Claxton, that is going to be a poor rebounding and defensive lineup. That's what I see. Now, that may not be the case. I might be wrong. Steve Nash might be smart and realize this team is better with Nicholas Claxton playing significant minutes than not. But then that means if the Nets are going to go with Blake Griffin, someone else has to be out of the rotation, whether it's going to be Timothy Labo-Cabarrot, Tyler Johnson, maybe one of those guys. Probably to start, it'll be Andre Robertson, who I don't even know if he's going to be back yet because he has to sign a 10-day contract, and I haven't heard if the Nets have done that yet. They probably weren't going to sign it. We'll probably hear about that in the next day or two. He's going to be the guy first, which is fine. But once Jeff Green comes back and Kevin Durant comes back, who's getting out of this rotation? Will Blake Griffin just not be part of the rotation once those guys come back? Maybe he's in the rotation now and then he becomes a depth piece? I'm okay with that. I really am. I mean, I don't think that's what Blake Griffin really signed up for, but I'd be okay with Blake Griffin being just a depth piece to when there's an injury to a player. But I just don't want to see the Nets putting Claxton to the back burner. I don't. Claxton should be in the rotation every game from now until the end of the year, barring injury, of course. He should be a main factor in the rotation because he's deserved it. And I think that the Nets play better with him defensively because he can switch and he can guard bigger and smaller players. So that's my biggest fear right now. That's my only real fear right now with this signing of Blake Griffin is not will he work, will he play well. I feel like whatever you get out of him is only going to be a plus. I just don't want him to come and take Claxton's minutes away. So that's what I think about the Blake Griffin move. Overall, I have to say I like it. I see the potential in it. It's another versatile player. Doesn't really help him a lot defensively, but it's just another versatile big that can fit into this rotation, especially with the injuries the Nets are dealing with. Depth is always a good thing, and it's an upgrade over the other players that they've had depth-wise. So now let's take a look at the next couple games and see what happened, what I think will happen with this team that went into the All-Star break winning 9 of its last 10 games. So first game up is Thursday night against the Celtics. Celtics are a team that's really trying to figure it out. They're massively underachieved this year, so I'm going to say that should be a win. Nets are on a roll. Everything is good. Blake Griffin gets thrown into the mix. It will be interesting to see what happens with Blake Griffin. I am eager to see if he'll dunk. That should be a win. Then they got Blake Griffin's old team, the Detroit Pistons. That game shouldn't even be close. That should just be a blowout win for the Nets. It really should, and I really believe that they will. Then they've got a fun one against the Knicks. Once again, that should probably be a win, but never sleep on the Knicks, especially this year's Knicks. They're a dangerous team, and they always, are going to come to play hard against the Nets. But still, that should win. And then they got the Pacers. Once again, that should be a win. So you're looking at the next 4 games. And once again, I've said this, the reality is with this Nets team, I'm looking at a couple games after that, Magic, then the Wizards, and then the Trailblazers. They should win every one of these games except until they maybe play the Trailblazers at Portland. Wizards game, you never know, since apparently the Wizards have the Nets number this year, but this is a different Nets team. But overall, I mean, look, the reality is, and then they got the Jazz after that. That would be an interesting game. But we're looking 10 games down the road. This Nets team should easily win 8 of their next 10 games, easily. And that's just the reality of it. And that's the way this team should be. The next 4 games, I expect them to go 4-0. And this team is at a whole other level. We've talked about it before. And when Kevin Durant comes back and Jeff Green comes back and everyone comes back, with now Blake Griffin, who's going to be an adequate player, the play of Nicholas Claxton, everything coming together, It's so exciting. It really is. This has to be a great moment for the Nets. And I'll tell you this. Now there's rumors about Andre Drummond being bought out by the Cavs and coming to the Nets, which I've talked about before. Are you kidding me? If that happens, and it's all speculation at this point, but if that happens, it's over. It's over. I mean, I'll go into a whole other spiel about that some other time, about the moves I think the Nets should make, because I'll obviously have an opinion about Nicholas Claxton getting less minutes in that situation too. But if Andre Drummond does get bought out by the Cavs, which buyout is still ways away, the trade deadline is still a couple weeks away, and the buyout is still about a week after that, so it may not happen right away. But if the Nets do somehow get Drummond, are you kidding me? And then, if the Nets do what I want to do and trade Spencer Dinwiddie to the Pelicans for J.J. Redick, which is something I'm going to touch upon when we get closer to the trade deadline, it's beyond over. I don't even want to jinx it, but I've talked about this with one of my good friends who's a huge Nets fan. What if Drummond gets bought out and does agree to come to the Nets, and then the Nets trade Dinwiddie for J.J. Redick? Once again, J.J. hasn't had the same type of year he's had in the past, but Dinwiddie is kind of an unnecessary player at this point. He's not even going to play most likely this year. Imagine this Nets team. Imagine that Nets team. You've got Blake Griffin added to the mix with Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant. Now you got Andre Drummond. Then you traded for J.J. Redick. We already have Joe Harris. Those guys are just going to run around and shoot threes. You've got Jeff Green. You've got useless at this point, but why not DeAndre Jordan? You know, you've got Landry Shamet. You've got the energy of Bruce Brown. You'll still have Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, who always plays with a chip on his shoulder. Like, you got Tyler Johnson, who's played well. Like, it just gets me a little giddy. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because maybe that's a pipe dream. But if the Nets can pull off what I just said, and that's this Nets team, it's beyond over. You might as well crown the Nets a championship because it don't need to be a complete debacle from this Nets team to lose to anyone with that team. I'm sorry. That's just the reality of it. But, pipe dream. I'll just end it at that. Just food for thought. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about the All-Star festivities, about, you know, the games coming up, what you're expecting. You know, overall, I'm expecting the Nets just to continue to play well. You know, I didn't really talk a lot about what I expect the second half, but that's just the reality of it. What do you guys think about Blake Griffin? How do you think he's going to fit in with this rotation? What's going to happen, and so on and so forth. And, yeah, so keep your eyes open. My next NetsBoy episode will be the 200th. And I've gotten some, you know, some suggestions from some people about what to do, and I'm pretty sure I figured out what I'm going to do. I don't want to give it away, but I think I know what I'm going to do. So keep your eyes open for that episode. Probably going to be pretty soon because I obviously have to get this episode in, the 200th, before I start talking about the rest of the Nets going into the season, the second half of the season. So probably within less than a week, I think you should be seeing my 200th episode. So that's going to be loads of fun. So keep your eyes open for that. And until then, this is NetsBoy getting ready and signing off.